Good day, lovely people. It's Professor Matt, and welcome once again to the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. And this is a sort of long overdue Liverpool update. Right. Things got a little away from me there after the spring breaks because inevitably there's more grading after that. But the good news is you should be seeing me a bit in the next couple weeks. The second part of the decolonization, Too Many Guys history series should be up probably midway, about a week from now or so, week or change. Right. And that is the first of what's going to be two episodes on the 1966 World Cup and, things related to that tournament involving decolonization, in this case, the All African boycott. So look forward to that. And right as the seasons, both in England and Scotland, respectively, are going to be drawn for a close soon, me and Celtic Cam have something special planned for you. So Scouts and Celtic will be back probably sometime in early to mid-May, after both Celtic and Liverpool have clinched their respective leagues. We'll do a season review. We'll look forward to the summer and the transfer window and needs. And we also have something kind of fun planned. Right, I can't tell you exactly what that is yet, but it should be a lot of fun, I think. So that's coming up, and me, Stead, and hopefully maybe a few other people we'll see, should be back in the fold with a more comprehensive EPL, UCL, European update in the not too distant future. So stay tuned to this channel. Uh, hmm, recommendation. Capelnius, Lithuanian beer. Very good. Anyway, so quite a bit has happened since the last time we spoke, or we were on the air. Uh, Liverpool got bounced out of the Champions League, and we lost to a better team in Newcastle in the Carabao Cup final. So gonna keep it real. That week there in like mid to late March was one of the worst, maybe the worst, uh, weeks of my life as a Liverpool fan. That was not cool. However, we have won two out of the last three, and including today at the death, 2-1 against West Ham. And right, mathematically, depending on what happens to Arsenal next week, although they're playing Ipswich, so I'm not getting my hopes up, we could potentially win the league with a victory over Leicester City on Easter Sunday. So, right, back up in your ass with the resurrection. Again, I don't see Arsenal dropping points next week, but it, the the big one is coming. So I'm a little about the way things shook down in Europe and certainly in the cup final because I thought we were going to win that match. Uh, but we're still going to win the league. And for me, having gone most of my, adult life not seeing us win the league, in fact, finding new and unusual ways not to win the league is still the bread and butter. That's the big one. So I it's we should be celebrating, or should I say celebrating? More about that in a second. In terms of that blip, and it was a blip, because I gotta keep it real. Up until the first half of today's match, and even then we only scored one goal. We've had a bit of a blip, right? And I want to dissect that a little bit. And I'm not going to go full on because some of this dissection is going to happen in that show that I'm going to record with Cam in a couple weeks. We talk about what needs to happen during the summer. Uh, but I'll say this. The squad depth is a problem. This is a very good team. Like our starting 11 is, if not the best, one of the best in England. And I'd argue even in Europe. But once you get past the starting 11, there are some question marks. There are some serious question marks, not at all positions, but there are some serious question marks. And there's also, I think, a lack of trust with certain guys. Uh, we're clearly a defensive minded midfielder short. And this has been, I feel like a broken record. I talk about this almost every time I come on, but we need someone other than Gravenberch. And right, it's funny, talk about trust. I think Slot actually trusts Endo. He came on today to see the match out, but I think he only trusts him when we're protecting a lead. If not, he's not going to play. Uh, so we need another defensive-minded midfielder. We need another center back. We probably we'll talk about this. Probably need two fullbacks. Right, and we definitely need a striker because Darwin Nunez does not remotely fit what Arne Slot I think wants out of the position. Uh, and Diego Jota can't stay healthy. He's literally you can play him for an hour a week, and then he has to come off and rest to save him from himself. So squad depth is an issue. And remember, beginning of the season, I said I don't think this team. I said I think would win one of the domestic trophies because I don't think we have the squad depth to win the league. Weirdly enough, we managed to win the league, but yet the lack of squad depth has hurt us uh, on other fronts. And this goes back to the other thing I wanted to talk about rotation or lack thereof. Uh, if you look at the amount of minutes guys like Van Dijk, Salah, Gravenberch, McAllister, even Sabazalai have played this season, it's kind of ridiculous. I'm actually, and I think this is why, particularly Mo, you've seen the levels drop, and even Van Dijk and Gravenberch. It's obvious, like he's been played too much. Uh Part of this goes back to the lack of depth and the lack of trust. But this is something which, from year one to now, you're moving on to year two, Slot has to get better at because we look ragged. We look a lot like some of the Klopp teams that at this time of the year would just be burnt out. And part of Slot's, tactics should negate that. But if you're not, making substitutions, if you're not rotating adequately, and not just substitutions, like maybe sometimes Mo needs to just sit for the first half. Uh, right? Because of the lack of that, we look burnt out mentally and physically. Uh, so my explanation, or to put a context on why that week was so crap, really, it does go back to look, I think we're 4 to 5 players short from being a complete team. And not necessarily now non-starters, just high quality depth. Uh, and right, the manager has to do a better job at rotation. Like, take a page out of Pep Guardiola's book, right? Don't necessarily play your big heavy hitters a full 90 minutes in August, September, October, even November. You Because you want to save them for when it matters down the stretch in, not just the league, but all of these tournaments. So, I mean, that's all I have to say about that. Uh, the other things I have to say is some over the last 3 weeks, some rather important developments have happened. One is, well, Trent Alexander-Arnold. He gone. Uh, Not official, but for all intents and purposes, we know he gone. Uh, and I want to address this because mentally, I've been okay with this since about September. Uh, Maybe even earlier, right? Because this whole Trent going to, Real Madrid stuff pretty much started getting beat around. Well, apparently this has been in the works since 2023, which I'll address that. That raises a lot of questions. But at least since the end of last season, I'll let you know my read about this. A lot of Liverpool fans, particularly the contingent that I call the Psycho Scouts Army, have collectively lost their minds. Uh, it's really hard to have a intelligent, sane conversation with them about this topic for whatever reason. Well, I have thoughts about why, but anyway, I'll let you know my thoughts. But here's the deal. Why is he leaving and why is he leaving now? Well, part of it goes back to, look, there have been rumors or, things have been thrown out there that we were willing to make him the highest paid English player in the league. If that is true, yeah, okay, maybe money didn't really have much to do with it. But if the reports out of Spain are correct, he's gonna be on a pretty decent wage. Not as much as we would have paid him, but he's gonna be on a good wage. And this is how Real Madrid does do business, that signing bonus. Right, and I'm sure his agent also got a nice signing on fee, happy doing business with you fee as well. So, like, there's that. Part of it is about his ambition and the club's ambition. Uh, FSG are not the worst owners, and certainly not the worst American owners in English football, but they are cheap. And I have said this repeatedly. They are cheap. They're overly frugal. They're not terrible. They've done some rather nice things, right? But they've also done some stuff which really does leave me stupefied at times. And it's about, not spending the vast amount of resources you have. And again, not going crazy and doing what like Man United and Chelsea used to do, where you just spend money for no goddamn reason. No Liverpool fan wants that. But when we know you have funds, and when you just don't use the funds to strengthen the squad, going back to what I said, what needs to happen during the summer, or to plug major holes, or waiting a year or two to plug major holes. Yeah, it is frustrating, and it needs to be said. He's going to Real Madrid, who year in and year out are amongst the favorites in the Champions League. I mean, they have what 15 of them now or 14 of them now. Right. And usually one of the favorites to win La Liga. Since FSG has taken over, yes, we've won the league. Well, it's going to be twice now. Yes, we've won the Champions League when we got to some finals. But the expectation isn't necessarily to compete on all fronts and dominate on all fronts year in, year out. That's not the way we're built. That's not the way this club's constructed, for better or for worse. Trent also, he has said it. He wants to be the first right back to win the Ballon d'Or. Do I think he's going to do that even at Madrid? No. But does he have a better chance of winning at Madrid? Yes, at 100%, absolutely he does. And the reason for that is, look, in the storied history of my club, we have had one Ballon d'Or winner, and that was Michael Owen, who, oh yeah, after he won that Ballon d'Or, fucked off to Real Madrid. Right, so he could win more, which he did, but you get the point. Uh, he has a much better chance of achieving his sort of personal goals uh, at Madrid than he does at Liverpool at the moment. He really does. And I think that Liverpool fans need to also acknowledge that. Again, is he going to win the Ballon d'Or, be the first right back to win the Ballon d'Or? No, I don't think he is. But he does have a better shot at, Real Madrid. And then finally, and this is when, again, I said starting at the end this time last year, and then certainly by September, I was like mentally prepared for this. If Jurgen Klopp stayed on, maybe, and I'm not totally certain about this, but maybe Trent decides to stick on. And the reason for that is the relationship between those two was almost like a father and son thing. Jurgen Klopp very much was a kind of second father to Trent Alexander-Arnold. And once Klopp said he was leaving, I think that's where this got serious because then, Trent probably looked around and said, look, I'm not going to win, the Ballon d'Or or any kind of personal accolades here at this club. Uh, probably not going to win as many trophies as I want to with the regularity or the frequency with this club. And oh yeah, like the only manager I've ever known as a professional is getting the hell out of town, and they're bringing in some Dutch Ernst Stavro Blofeld impersonator that no one ever heard of. Right? So those really are the main reasons. And also too, and this is just speculation, maybe there's something tactical. Right, because it looks like Ancelotti, this is his last stand at Real Madrid. And so who are they going to call? Well, not the Ghostbusters. I imagine it's Xabi Alonso. Uh, and Alonso, that's the other thing too. Had we gotten Alonso, I do think Trent actually stays, or it's not a foregone conclusion that he left because look, and I'll talk about this when I talk about the footballing side of all this. Trent don't like to play defense. He doesn't. Right. But with Xavi's system, the 3-4 uh 2-1, he wouldn't have to. He would be that offensive right wing back. He'd be better for promoting. Right. And so there's a real chance that Jobby gets that gig, and Trent can do what he can do best in that system at a place where you're constantly aiming to win everything before you every season. So there's that. I'm not pissed at this. Again, I've been mentally prepared for it for damn near almost a year at this point, 8 months and change. And the reason for that is, well, it's twofold. One, and let's talk about the footballing side of it. We will miss his passing. We will miss what he brings to the offensive, creative side of the game. We will. Because when he is in form and at his best, he's unplayable. He's world class at doing those things. And that's why Real Madrid wants him, guys. Let's keep that real. Defensively, yeah. Like it's not that he can't do it. It's just I think we've reached a point with him that he's like unwilling to do it. It's never been about ability with Trent. It's always been about uh, you know, application. Will you apply yourself to this? And the funny thing is, when he first broke into the team, he was willing to defend, right? Which, by the way, that if you're a right back, that's your first job. You still have to defend first. Right. So I I I don't think from a squad standpoint, his loss is going to be all that great. And the reason I say that is, look, the last couple seasons in particular, he's gotten away with goddamn murder, right? Uh, and this is one of the things too, where he's been a little bit better defensively this season because he's been forced to in Sloth's system. Jurgen, look, I love Jurgen. He's my favorite Liverpool manager, certainly in my lifetime. But Jurgen let him get away with a lot of stuff, right? He didn't he, because we used to play that bombs away, fullbacks up high, he got away with out defending. And then, 2 years ago, the whole, oh, we're going to invert him and essentially turn him into a midfielder so he doesn't have to defend. Klopp found new and unusual ways to get the best out of Trent, but also like of having to avoid Trent actually doing his primary job, which is defending, weirdly enough. Right. And the fact that he is Scouse, I'll address this in a second. For years, I think that shielded him because if he wasn't Scouse, if he was, Trentino, Alexandrano, I think a lot more Liverpool fans, particularly the Psycho Scouts cult army, would have been saying what I've been saying for the last couple of years, where it's like, look, he just doesn't want to defend. Like he's negligent. Uh so I don't from a purely footballing standpoint, I don't think it's that huge a loss because If this is 2 years ago and we had that old Klopp midfield, like the Brexit midfield, I'd be worried because we didn't really have creative midfielders. And the ones we did have, Ox and Naby, were constantly injured. But now we have McAllister. We have Sabazalai. We have Curtis Jones, who, hey, he's the last 2 seasons he's grown into a legit player, the player I think we all thought he could be. And if he stays, to be determined, we also have Harvey Elliott. We have guys who can create just from different places on the pitch now. So what he's really good at, which he is still, like I said, when he's on it, he's the best in the freaking. He's one of the best in the world. We have that, and Mo Salah's become more creative. Defensively, he's not going to be missed though. He's not. I like Connor Bradley. I like him a lot. Do I think he's ready to take on the role full time? Not so certain about that. But I think in a year or two, maybe he will be. And right, if FSG just do what they should frickin' do and sign probably an older, like I wish Joshua Kimmich was going to be available for free because like 2 year rent to Kimmich, uh, to sort of, rotate between midfield and right back would have been awesome. If we just get an older, more defensively solid right back to, effectively platoon with Bradley, I'm okay with that. If we keep Joe Gomez, to be determined, that's another option too. So I don't think we're really going to miss him that much from a footballing standpoint. My personal feelings about this, like I said, with talking about the reasons why, I can't get that upset. The only thing I can say is if this really was getting hatched as early as 2023, and once it became clear when Jurgen was leaving, you wanted to go, why the F didn't you just tell us this so we could have sold you last summer? Right? Because that should have been the play. The fact that he's leaving for free does kind of bother me some. But I can't blame the guy, right? Because when he talks about ambition, I say personal, but ambition in terms of the club. Yeah, that's one of my big issues with FSG. I do not feel we are ambitious enough. Right. So he's spot on there. Right. And the other thing, and I'll address this in a second, I think it's really hard for certain Liverpool fans, and particularly the fans in Britain, to understand this. But we as Americans, I think we would completely understand. Look, Trent's been at the club since he was a freaking, kid, like literally a kid. This is all he's ever known. And he's a local boy too, he's scout, so he grew up here. He's in his mid-20s now. You gotta leave home. You gotta go home. And see, this is what I mean. Like a lot of my British cohort and colleagues, some of them do go away to quote unquote to university, but a lot of them, even when they go to university, stay local. Like most of my, Scousers who went to the University of Liverpool, right? Same thing with a lot of my peeps from Manchester and Newcastle. They went to their local universities. Why? Because it's cheaper, etc. In this country, when you go to college, you're 18, you usually, not always, usually, you go someplace else. Your adventure, your journey, quote unquote, begins. Trent's never really been on a journey. He's had a journey, but his journey's been at the crib. Uh, go home after practice and eat your mom's food if you want, right? Like he's never experienced that. And doesn't he have a right to experience that? Like, yeah, go to Spain, learn some different stuff, learn a new language, see if you can become the first right back to win Ballon d'Or, which I don't think you are, but okay, right? I don't see anything wrong with that. He's given us, geez, seven really good freaking no, eight seasons at the club and some iconic moments. I mean, corner taking quickly will always be there. Now, will the perception of him as a quote unquote Liverpool legend versus a really good player we had when we won stuff? Yeah, I think that is going to get wonky. There's not going to be a Trent statue outside Anfield anytime soon, if ever. Uh, there was some talk of him being the club captain. I never really embraced that because I don't think he has a quote unquote captain's mentality. And that's not a knock on him. Not everybody, there's a lot of great players that don't have that. Right. I think Curtis Jones actually probably has a better chance of being future Liverpool captain. Uh, and not just because Trent's leaving, I think because of his character and his makeup and just who he is as a player. Uh, so yeah, is this going to affect his legacy? Of course it is. When I first started getting into the club and getting into the sport seriously, it was the late '90s, so it was the like ass end of the Spice Boys era, and then like what would have then become the Houllier era. And look, one of the reasons, amongst many, that I chose Liverpool was because of Michael Owen. I think it's easy to forget how effing good Michael Owen was at his age, right? Like, it's crazy. Owen's still one of the four or five most talented players I've ever seen at the club, and one of my favorite players still. I tell that to Liverpool fans. They get weird. They get bent out of shape. Right, because it's like he left for Real Madrid and then he played for Man United. And okay, word, he played for Man United. That was because he wanted to come back to Liverpool. Rafa Benitez was like, I don't know who the hell you are, so you're not in my plan. Right. And his choice was Man United Stoke. Come on. Where you gonna play? For real. Stop that. So, he didn't bow out like Suarez, right? Like Felipe Coutinho, like, Raheem Sterling, guys who like faked injuries and put up a fuss and eventually forced their way out. Trent didn't do any of that. So I can't get mad at him for that. And it's funny because the people that really are the Scouse Psycho Cult Army folks, listen, if he was not local, if he wasn't Scouts, because he was a foreign dude, would you really be this heartbroken? Would you really be putting up this kind of fuss? Because the whole Scouts thing works. It's a funny old thing. It works both ways. For years, I've been trying to get into these guys' skulls that look, as much as I love Trent and as much as I love what he brings to the offensive, sort of creative side of the game, his application defending is garbage. And they would just be like, no, 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 you're being too hard on him. He's not that bad. Now that he wants to leave, traitor, worm, snake, blah, 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 blah. Guys, if he wasn't Scouse, would you be saying that? Right? And not even if he's foreign. Let's say he was from like London or Leeds or Birmingham or something. Would you really be that like pissed off at him? Right? It's a funny old thing. You can make excuses for the man because he's a local boy. But when the local boy wants to actually go and experience the world, you get your, panties in a twist. I don't get it. Uh, I wish Trent well. I really hope he doesn't get racially abused. Because that's the first thing, unfortunately, that I thought of. I was like, crap, he's going to Spain, and I don't know if the light skin will save you. But he has his buddy Bellingham there. Right. So I wish him well, just not against us. Win all kinds of stuff. But if we're playing you in the Champions League, fuck Trent, right? F you, Trent. So that's where I'm at. I can't get pissed off. And a big part of it too was of the three guys with aspiring contracts in terms of importance, Trent, in my opinion, was always a distant third. I could live with this. I'm calm. And I'm much calmer now today because we know officially that one of the other two has resigned. That's right. Mo Salah is staying put and will put in a full decade at the club. And I am giddy. Now, look, he is old, and I'm convinced that FSG were prepared to allow him and Van Dijk potentially to leave at the end of the year. And actually, in the summer, before I clearly understood that Trent was out the door, and before a ball was kicked this season, that's another important factor. I was I was convinced Mo was the guy going. I figured they'd re-sign Van Dyke and they would try their hardest because he was young and he was homegrown to re-sign Trent. But then Mo had the season he's having, an historic season, an all-time season. And if you take Mo out of the equation, I'm not saying we're a bad team, but we're not we don't win the league. We don't. He is still vitally important in what we do. And it's a testament to him that at his age, he has changed the way he plays. He is still a lethal volume goal scorer, but the creativity, like, when he first got to the club, he was so reliant upon just his raw speed. And that worked for a number of years. But you've seen the last couple of years, particularly the second half of the season, there's usually a drop off. There's been a little bit of a drop off this year too, but like if you told me when he first came to the club in 2017 that he would be a 20 a year assist guy, I would have laughed at. But here we are, and he's most likely going to wind up 20 for 20, the only player to do so other than Thierry Henry, who I still think is, from my opinion, at the very least, the best foreign player to ever play in the Premier League. So he's coming back. He's coming back on a 2-year deal. I would have given it two and then like a possibility for a third. But after 2 more years, it probably would be time. And this buys us time to look for a successor if such a thing actually exists. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled because it means that the window for this immediate sort of group is still, I think, wide open. Uh, with Mohamed Salah in the next 2 years, even if there's a little bit of a drop off, which I imagine there is in the next year because the season's been historic, we have a better chance of competing and winning stuff than we do without him. Because yeah, we could get a pretty good player. We could get a Rodrigo. I'm a big fan of Mohamed Kudus. Uh, I even like the young Scottish kid that we have, Ben Doak, long term, I should say, not now. But like, we could find a replacement. But there really isn't a replacement. Such a human does not exist in world football at the moment. So, needless to say, I'm as pleased as punch. And it looks like, from everything I've heard, this is crazy because I assumed he'd be the first to resign. It looks like we're going to be hearing that Van Dyke too is going to re-up for 2 years. So I want to go back to a podcast we probably recorded either in August or September, and I've been saying this from jump. I said two of the three stay. I think they're going to be the two old guys, and I think Trent's gone. And I this I was perfect correct. So yeah, my captain. Uh, and arguably, when all is said and done, I think his legacy is going to surpass Gerrard simply because, as good as Gerrard was, if you take away the Champions League, those are some barren years. Like we won some cups, but like we didn't. Like Mo's output, the stuff we've won, I think that elevates him past Gerrard. And Miles, I think all said and done, he's like he leaves Liverpool probably with the goal record when all said and done, the club record, and right as the greatest Liverpool player of the Premier League era. In my personal opinion, Van Dijk's probably the most important, but Mo will probably have that distinction. So I am pleased as punch that the two of them are staying. That's a huge, you know, albatross, uh, or just off that's the gorilla is off the back, and we can actually concentrate on what we need to do during the summer. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Expect probably, like I said, me and Cam are going to gather at some point in the next couple weeks to record once the league has been sealed. And right, keep your eyes out for other stuff. The decolonization series part two should be out in the next week or so. And like I said, Stead, myself, and maybe some other people, we should be speaking to you in the not too distant future. Uh yeah, that's all I have to say. And for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, this is Professor Matt. You guys take care of yourselves and all of you Western and Eastern Christians as well, because it falls on the same day this year. You guys have a wonderful Easter for those of you who celebrate. Anyway, gang, take care.